We're talking about the rail network as the government announces record investment over the next 5 years to the tune of £38 billion to our railway system. It appears that Cornwall has once again lost out. Well, Peter Chegwyn is the South West representative of the anti-HS2 campaign group HS2 Action Alliance, and he joins me now on the line. Afternoon to you, Peter.
Good afternoon, Donna.
Thank you very much for joining us. So what's your reaction to what Baroness Kramer, the Transport Minister, has just been saying?
Incredulity and anger, because we've heard it all before. A lot of fine words, no action. The 38 billion investment in the rail network today is good news for London, the South East, Birmingham, Manchester, Oxford, Milton Keynes, but nothing at all for the South West. And that's been the story over so many years. By the Minister's own admission just now, the rail use in the South West has grown by 40% in the past 10 years. It's forecast to grow by another 40% in the next 10 years. But is anything being done to improve the infrastructure, reduce journey times between Plymouth and Penzance? Nothing at all. And I think rail users in the South West will be very angry to see all this investment going into the rest of the country and scarcely a penny going into the South West.
OK, the Baroness did say that extensive conversations are ongoing with local people. Do you know anything about that?
No, not at all. And anyway, it's not conversations that we need, and with her saying, well, she'll take a look at it again in July. It's action we need. You know, we've had Brunel's great railway line falling into the sea at Dawlish. People to the west of that have been without any rail links to the rest of the country for over 2 months now. Another week or so to go. What they want is assurances that they can actually get around the country from A to B. It's no good having investment in the rest of the country if the West Country itself is cut off from the rest of the country. And for the Minister to just say, oh, well, she'll talk about it again, simply is not good enough. Action is what is needed, not words.
But do you think maybe we all are in part to blame for this? Should we not have been talking about it a lot earlier, rather than waiting for something to happen? Should we not have all been lobbying for better rail services for many, many years before this?
Well, the West Country MPs and West Country communities and commuters have been doing exactly that. I mean, MPs from all parties, Gary Streeter, Conservative, Adrian Sanders from Torbay, Lib Dem, Ben Bradshaw, Exeter, they've all been calling for this, as have the commuters for many, many years. It's the government that has failed, government of whatever party, and politicians in London who failed, who only seem interested in prestige projects like HS2, £50 billion between London and Birmingham. What we need, a few million of that, would transform the West Country rail lines, give us an alternative route to make sure that if Dawlish or any other part of the coastal route suffers in increasingly bad weather, that there's an alternative to ensure the rail network can survive and it isn't put out of action for over 2 months. And crucially, to speed up, even when the network is working, speed up journey times so it doesn't take 2 hours to go 80 miles between Plymouth and Penzance.
Well, we know all of this, Peter. Why isn't the message getting through?
Well, good question. I think the West Country MPs and people in the West Country, including the media, have done everything they can to hammer government and put the message home. And hopefully the Minister's own interview just now and the questions you asked her will bring it home to her, because I got the feeling, frankly, she doesn't really understand the frustrations and the problems in the West Country, or the geography, or the problems with existing lines. Really, with great respect, I've known Susan Kramer many years. She's a lovely person, but I got the feeling she didn't really understand the real anger in the West Country and frustration at the total lack of action by government to help a very large part of the country.
Well, it does seem a little bit strange that they're planning to put a lot of money into electrifying something like 850 miles worth of the rail network, but nothing here. Now, surely, as we were just saying earlier, it takes 2 hours from Penzance to Plymouth. Surely our rail network should be electrified.
Absolutely right. It is bonkers that we're still using old diesel trains in the West Country and haven't got the benefits of modern electrified lines. And it is crazy that a line could be put out of action for over 2 months, leaving the West Country completely cut off. I mean, for instance, there's a major Celtic event in St Ives this weekend.
Yeah.
Tourism is crucial to the West Country. Events like that are suffering because people cannot physically get there by rail and don't always want a long long drive. Now, tourism, as we all know, is absolutely essential for the West Country, quite apart from the need for links for people who live there and commute to London and rely on the railways for their own businesses. And we simply cannot afford to have this situation where the line is out of action, and even when it's in action, we're still suffering from old trains and basically putting a sticking plaster on a Victorian rail line when we need modern investment like the rest of the country being promised. If it's good enough for London, the South East, Birmingham and the North, why not the West Country? Surely we deserve a fair slice of the cake.
Well, let's just think about HS2. The Baroness says it's essential for the country, particularly the north of England and so on. She says, really, we shouldn't be discussing that in relation to this because that has a separate funding pot.
Well, why does it have a separate funding pot? All the money at the end of the day is taxpayers' money. Maybe the government should ask the taxpayers a little more on how they'd like it being spent. I think most people who love the railways, rely on the railways, use the railways, would rather that money be spent on improving our existing infrastructure rather than create a line that will get you from London to Birmingham 10 minutes faster and not stop anywhere en route. It doesn't even stop at Heathrow. It goes right past Heathrow, and it's bonkers that people who fly in the country, and business people, tourists, whatever, will still have to go from Heathrow into London to get the line up to Birmingham, then change at either Birmingham or Crewe to get anywhere further. We're now being told it won't link into HS2 and the Channel Railway line in London. It's a nonsense. £50 billion that could be spent so much better on our existing rail infrastructure, and a fraction of that money could transform rail travel in the southwest.
We are where we are, Peter. Where are we going from here then? The message hasn't got through up until now. What can you, of all people, do about it?
Well, we're not going very far if the government carries on its present line, or we'll be going just from London to Birmingham non-stop. I think the message is starting to get through, and I think politicians of all parties, including Ed Balls, the Shadow Chancellor, who said that there cannot be a blank cheque for HS2. People like Adrian Sanders from Torbay saying he's not going to vote for it unless he gets assurances first that the West Country lines will be improved. I think the government, this government and whoever is government in a year's time, have got to listen to that and think again on HS2, because £50 billion is a colossal sum of money that actually isn't going to achieve very much.
All
and
right,
that money
Peter,
could be much better spent on our existing rail lines, particularly in the West Country.
Peter, lovely to have you on the programme. Thank you ever so much for your viewpoints this lunchtime.